Yeah.
Hey guys, Pete with Colorado Custom Covers and Decks. We do a picture frame on our stairs that we call a waterfall. And the reason for that is because we have this cascading event of all square edge boards. So normally a lot of guys, some guys will just run decking square across. They don't picture frame it. Then you see the end grains of all those deck boards. We don't really like that unfinished look. Other times in the past, we were just picture framing the decking in the front. So you'd have a nice picture frame in the front, but then as your riser carried out to the end of the stairs, you'd see the end grain of that riser showing. And so not really a big deal when you're working with wood because you can stain everything, it all looks the same. But when you're working with composite decking, the inside of that decking material just looks so much different. It's a lot chalkier looking. So especially when you're going with like a darker board, like a brown, or we have this slate border up here. The inside of that deck board just looks really chalky. It kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. So instead, we kind of saw this. I'm not too sure where we saw it first, but we saw this kind of way of this cascading waterfall of square edge pieces. So we started doing it. We kind of developed our own way that we like to do it, that we think is efficient, because there's a lot of work that goes into this. Trust me, it's like twice as long as just doing a normal set of stairs with square treads, but it looks really good at the end and it's worth it. So showing Nick today how we like to install them, and then I'll explain a little bit too about how we go ahead and cut everything and just like the most efficient way to go about it. So what I typically like to do on a set of stairs like this, as you can see, we got 4 stringers in here. And then the first thing that you got to do is square up your stringers. So you can do that by measuring from top to bottom corner. What you got to do first is cut, some sort of riser at the same length as your stairs are set on the top. So whatever you got at the layout, for us right now it's 43 and 11/16. I cut this 2x4 at that same one, and I screwed all these stringers in on that same layout. So what you could do is you could take that board, set it on top, and scribe where all the stringers are, or you can just measure and make a mark on your board. So these stringers are attached, so now we know the top and the bottom of the set of stairs are the same width, and then you move the stairs left to right to get them square. And how you can figure that out is by taking a measurement from the top right corner to the bottom left corner, trying to match that to the other side. Once you get those numbers the same, you move the stairs left to right to fix that. So say I did this measurement and I got a number that was smaller than this measurement, I want to move the stairs a little bit that way. So that's just kind of how you're going to square up the stairs. Once you get the stairs square, you need to block them. So you need a block on the flat between the outsides. You don't need a blocks in the middle. If you've got more than 4 stringers, don't worry about the ones in the middle. Just make sure they're square on your layout. But we block the top because, as you can see, this inner tread, when it goes in, is not going to reach that last stringer anymore because of the picture frame. So we need something to screw into with that inner tread. We need to pin down the inner corners of these outside treads. And then we also do a block on the vertical. That helps us with screwing in the vertical piece here, and then our riser, once again, is not going to make it all the way to that last stringer anymore. So our riser board is going to stop here. We need somewhere to tag that in. So make sure you get everything blocked. And then, as you can see, we tape the heck out of these stairs. The reason we tape them so much is because we're actually going to waterproof the underside of these stairs with Trex Rain Escape, and then we'll be able to put a finished ceiling on underneath. So haven't seen a lot of guys do that. It ends up looking really cool when you finish the underside of stairs. So if you have the opportunity to, you should definitely try it. So now my stairs are square, they're blocked, and they're taped. And so then I go about cutting all these pieces. So I have 3 components. I have a vertical component of the waterfall, I have the side component, and then I have the front tread. These are all square edge boards. And this is Decorators decking, by the way, and this is their Tundra color. And then we're going to be doing the riser in slate. So it's really nice, almost white to black contrast. It looks really good when it's done. And then we put little black riser lights in as well, so everything matches really nicely. So these boards are always going to be the same. These ones on the side, I've determined that I really like cutting them 11 7/8. So that is from the long point on the back of this 45 here, on the miter that goes vertically, to the long point of my 45 from my picture frame. The reason I go with 11 7/8, if you have 2 deck boards next to each other with a 3/16 gap, you end up with, and the deck boards are always 5.5 inches, most composite decking is, you'll end up with 11 3/16 from the front of that deck board to the back of that deck board, and that's with that 3/16 gap in the middle. But so then you might say, okay, then cut it at 11 3/16. Well, no, because we're also putting a riser behind it, and then we want a gap, an equal gap from that deck board to our riser board as well. So our riser board varies, like the variance is about 7/16 to a half an inch, and then we got the gap in the back. Do the math, it's 11 7/8 for the long point. My front tread I typically cut 3 inches wider than my stair layout. So I said this is 43 and 11/16. I'll cut my front tread at 46 and 11/16. That way, when I put my 1/2 inch fascia on each side, I have an inch overhang on my deck boards, which I think is a nice finished look. And then the vertical piece is just whatever your rise is. So on this set of stairs, our rise is 7 and 5/16. I take a 16th to an 1/8 off of the vertical piece from the long point to the square point, because when you put these deck boards together, they don't always miter perfectly depending on your stairs. And also there's a little bit of just inherent thickness when you're cutting this composite material. So that 1/8 or 16th that you leave out of that gives you a little bit of play, and to make sure that you're not sticking out above this and heaving up the next board. Because once you get down the line, if you keep doing that, you'll have a kind of nasty looking set of stairs. So those are all the components. The way that I cut those is I'll go ahead and cut all of these blocks, the side ones and the vertical ones, on the chop saw. I cut them close to their length. So this 11 and 7/8 I'll cut at 12 inches. This 7 and 5/16, 7 and 3/16 I'll cut at 7.5 or so. The reason for that is because I like to just pass everything through the table saw then. So if you've ever noticed on a chop saw, if your guide isn't great and you're trying to cut a 45 on a miter like that, you don't always get a nice square cut. And then when you bevel your chop saw off to the side, it's actually just really challenging to cut through composite material. It's just a tough material to cut. So what I do is I get them close to what I need them, and then I run everything through the table saw. So then I've got my table saw set so that my long point is 7 and 3/16, 7 1/4, whatever that might be, and I can pass all these boards through and cut them all at once. And then same thing with this board, you know, it's got a miter going this way, it's got a miter going this way. So instead, I'll just cut them at 12, run them through the table saw. Then when they run through the table saw, one side's going to be square, and then this side's going to have the miter on it. But every single one is exactly the same size at that point, 11 and 7/8 from the long point of this miter to the square point. And then all I need to do, I don't need to take measurements anymore, is I get back on my chop saw, set it on the 45, and just line up my saw with the corner every time. And that way I don't need to measure, I don't need to mark anything, I'm just cutting those every time. And then with the front, I'll just use the same board, just go through and just cut it on the chop saw. So as we get here, you really have to stay square. That's the most important thing. So everywhere you go, as you're working your way around, you're checking your reveal on the side. And remember I said I went 3 inches big with this front tread, so I have 1.5 inches on each side. So I'll check the reveal of this side board on the front, 1.5 inches, on the back, 1.5 inches, and then the same thing with this piece right here, 1.5, 1.5, that's all square. I go and do the same thing on this other side. So this side I'm just kind of matching with the other side. Work my miters to make them look good. Things might look a little funky because everything's not screwed down yet, but then once you get those screwed down, everything flushes up. So now I've got this side set in place. I'm going to check again. If all my cuts were right, I should have 1.5 in the front, 1.5 in the back, and then same thing with my vertical piece, which I do have. And so the process I like to do is pin down the front board first. So as you're working your way up, I always start at the bottom. Here we're starting on the second one. It's not a big deal. Doesn't affect the end result. Since I know I like this layout, I'm going to go ahead and pin the board down with my knee. Usually it's my not dominant knee, so my left knee, and that's so I can use my right hand to screw. I'm going to go ahead and pin that. That's exactly where I wanted that to be. Now I go back to the other side. I know this board is pinned right there where I want it, but it might have moved a little bit while I screwed it. So then I just go to the other side and I check everything again. And that looks good to me. So then I'm going to kneel on it again so it doesn't move. I'm going to pin that board. And then you're just working your way around. Typically I'll pin the insides because that still lets me kind of pivot everything that I need. So then I'll pin these ones in. And right now I know I'm going into the flat, but once you start getting over to the edge of the board when you're going to tag into the stringers, make sure you measure and don't miss the stringer. So I've got that piece pinned now. I'll go back and pin the other side. Get the miter nice and tight, hold it. Pin it. See, that looks really good now. And then all you got to do at that point is go through, match your bottom corners up on your vertical pieces, and then measure at the top to make sure you're still at 1.5 inches. So here it's matched up nicely. I've got an 1.5 inch reveal, staying nice and square. I could take a screw and go right into the stringer, or I could go into my block, or I can go into the top grain of my flat block. This one I'll just go into the stringer. Hold that nice and tight. And this is all going to get Cortex plugged, obviously. And then from there, I'd obviously have to go pin the other side. But then from there, since I got this first one really nice and square, all I have to do then is start lining these up with each other. So I grab my next set of sides, I grab my next set of vertical pieces. Nice catch. I put them all together again, and then all I have to do is kind of feel for when they're flush. Because if your stairs are all square, your stringers are all cut nice, and these front boards are all the exact same dimension, then all you have to do is make sure everything's flush. Use your tape every once in a while to check that you're still on 1.5 inches and work your way all the way up. That's how you do it. Once again, you got the 3 components, all square edge pieces. This is all Decorators decking. We think it's an awesome product. We like to use it on every job we do. Got your 3 pieces. Find an efficient way that works for you to cut them. I'd recommend running them through the table saw because I don't like doing a miter like this on the chop saw ever, even with like a natural wood product. Get them all laid out, match your reveals, pin it down so that stuff doesn't move on you. Pin down the front first, work your way to the sides, then the verticals, and then start just lining everything up and working your way up. Thanks, guys. Hope this helped. If you think it helps, give us a follow. We post a lot of videos on this kind of stuff. Thanks.